Hello nerds! Welcome to Generally Nerdy. This is the Week in Nerdom, your place for daily nerd news updates. This being Tuesday, it is TV news today. So in TV news, we're talking about One Punch Man. The Deadpool animated series is coming back into the news, and we'll definitely be covering all of this. Batwoman. Lots of stuff is hitting on the TV side, and we have reviews to do, so let's jump into the intro. Some of these updates are real quick, so it shouldn't be a super long video today, but stick around to the end because we're reviewing some stuff, guys. First on the list is a quick one. Like I just mentioned, we're talking about One Punch Man. Preview for Season 2 has landed on YouTube, so follow the link in the description. Go check that out. It's if you liked Season 1, Season 2 looks like it's just going to be more of the same. And that is not a bad thing, so go check that out after you finish watching today's episode. Next on the list, for all of you Grant Morrison fans out there, we have some happy news. TV Line is reporting that they have enlisted Weird Al to voice a character for Season 2. The character's name is Smoking Man Baby, which sounds like a little bit of a take on an X-Files character. Just saying. It's probably intentional, but it might not be. You can see on the screen right about here, it doesn't look like the Smoking Man. It just looks like a baby with a cigarette or a cigar. So they're describing the character in their official press release as toxic masculinity in a diaper. So the politics in Season 2 are going to be a lot of fun. Don't know how much I'm looking forward to that. I actually still have to finish Season 1, but it's a pretty good show, I'm not going to lie. It's not... Christopher Maloney is great. I don't know if I've seen him in anything that I really disliked his performance. Granted, he was in Law & Order, which is a pretty crap show when you really break it down as far as quality of cinematography and storytelling goes. Law & Order is not a great example of anything, but Christopher Maloney, for any of the episodes I have seen with him in it, always performs and is always a great actor, and grateful he has left that atrocity in order to do actual acting. And he's shown us at True Blood and the Harold and Kumar movies, he's got a wicked sense of humor, great comedic timing, and in this he's showing us that he can also be funny while being a badass. So super recommend Season 1, at least so far. I'm about halfway through of Season 1 on Happy. It is on Netflix. If you didn't catch it on FX, then definitely check it out on Netflix before Season 2 starts airing. And that's what we've got on there. Next, I talked about it in the intro. We're talking about it now. Deadpool, the animated series, just might come back. The news comes direct from Rob Liefeld. I can't remember how that's pronounced. The actual creator of the character. He said recently that he was talking with an executive at Marvel, so very vaguely he's talking here, and the executive said, "Don't worry, Robert, we're going to give you your animated series." It's speaking specifically about Deadpool. So just because the Donald Glover series didn't happen doesn't mean that it's completely off of the table, and that is fantastic news. And speaking of Deadpool, real quick shameless self-plug, if you follow this link right here, then you'll be able to see my interview with longtime author of the Deadpool comic book. He is actually the first author of a Deadpool series, even though Rob Liefeld created the character. Joe Kelly wrote him and actually is the one who kind of created who we know of as Deadpool now. He honed the character to what we know of the character today. So that's pretty freaking awesome. Go check it out. my interview with Joe Kelly from last year's Dink Denver convention. Next on the list for TV news is Batwoman. We all knew this was coming. It just was never officially announced, and now they are officially announcing it. CW has greenlit a pilot, not a series just yet. So they greenlit a script. I believe we've talked about that part before, but they apparently liked the script that they were given. They liked Ruby Rose in the Elseworlds crossover event, so those 3 episodes between Flash, Supergirl, and Green Arrow. So that all has gone over well with the CW, so now they're putting money into a pilot episode, and if that goes over well, then we will be getting a series for Batwoman. I almost said Wonder Woman. That would have been silly. So, Batwoman, Ruby Rose, there is no official announcement on the dates for any of this, when it's going to go into production, anything like that. Though, we do know that Sweeps happens early spring, so perhaps they'll be somewhere around there, though Sweeps is kind of going slowly the way of the buffalo, so that might not have any play into it. At the very latest, though, I feel like we will be hearing about whether or not CW has picked it up by early fall, would be my latest conjecture. Earliest is probably going to be about early to mid-summer would be probably when they would announce the earlier stuff, because they take that break and blah blah blah, so that all kind of makes sense. And then our last bit of news this week also is going to be a real quick one. It's Punisher. We have an official release date for season 2 on Netflix. January 18th is the official release of the series of season 2 for the series, and then probably January 20th, 21st, we'll be hearing about its cancellation. Just because that apparently is the way things have been going. No word yet on Jessica Jones and all that jazz, but Punisher is shaping up to be something pretty incredible. So you can follow the link in the description to go see that trailer. And that, guys, is all we have for news. Next up, let's talk about reviews for the week. Before we jump into reviews, though, guys, let me remind you about the Patreon. Patreon.com/generallynerdy for more content, monthly discords, contributor and producer credits, plus much, much more. Go check out patreon.com/generallynerdy. And now, on to the reviews. This week for reviews in TV, we're going to be talking about Bandersnatch and Titans. Before we get to those, though, because this is still a newish segment on the channel, I'm going to break it down a little again like I did yesterday. We're talking 4 different scores, right? So each review is going to have a general score, an enjoyability score, and then the other 2 are going to change depending on what we're talking about. So in television, likely there's only going to be 2 different kinds. We're going to be talking about TV episodes and TV series. We're actually doing one of each today, so it'll be a good example of those. So in episodes, it's going to compare it to other episodes in the series, other episodes specifically in that season, that kind of stuff. And then we're also going to be talking about story. Actually, for TV, story is probably going to be always a rating as well. So the only thing is how that singular episode compares to the rest of the episodes. Or for a series, we're going to be talking about how that season compares to other seasons, or how that series compares to its source material. So this week, again, we're talking about Titans. We're going to talk of comparisons between how that works against the comics and what kind of they've done to the interpretation. So without any further ado, let's talk Bandersnatch. Netflix has given us some Black Mirror goodness a little early. They are still working on that next season, but they've given us, actually, this is not just Black Mirror goodness. This is like crazy internet streaming, breaking new ground, brand new frontier kind of goodness, because this is a pick your own adventure show. This is a pick your own adventure episode, so it's got that going for it. Now, initially, when we talked about this, when this was rumored to be happening and then kind of confirmed to be happening by Netflix, I had voiced an opinion that, when you read those pick your own adventure books, depending on its genre, depending on obviously the reading level, I only read Pick Your Own Adventures when I was still in grade school, so that was kind of my frame of reference. Now, the ones that I read the most were Goosebumps, and the Goosebumps books, if you read a traditional Goosebumps book, it's like 250 pages. If you read a Pick Your Own Adventures Goosebumps book, it's still 250 pages, even though it has multiple endings, which means the actual story that you get is pretty short, because you have to account for all of those different ways for it to end. So I was concerned that we were going to get that syndrome in the TV side of things. And I was definitely assuaged twice with that concern. First, when you first see the thumbnail on Netflix and it has the time down in the bottom corner, probably on this side because it's backwards. So it has the time down in the bottom corner and it said an hour and a half. And I was like, oh, that's like 30 minutes longer than a regular Black Mirror episode. That's pretty awesome. So they did kind of give you more there. But then in actually watching it, I was probably going through this for about 2 hours, maybe even longer, 2 hours and 20 minutes or so. So even more content than they advertised. So under promise, over deliver, definitely what they've done here. And it was a step out of a couple of boxes for them, because obviously Pick Your Own Adventure was something brand new. But the other thing is that it's retro sci-fi and not future sci-fi. So that was also pretty different. I have nothing to complain about. This was a whole lot of fun. This was definitely a lot of fun trying to see which choices affected the outcome and how it affected the outcome. And the way I figured it is there's only really like there's only three proper endings. I don't think you can call any of them good. There's a number of short endings, the ones where the game doesn't come out. So before let me explain a little bit more. Bandersnatch is about a game designer creating a game for the Atari, I believe, 2600. It might have been a computer game. I can't remember. I should have wrote it down and I didn't. I'm sorry. But he's creating it's like 1986. So it's a very old style video game based on a book. Now, also to the credit of this show, the book that he's basing it on is also a Pick Your Own Adventure, but it's like a friggin' tome. It's like bigger than the Bible big. And so that theoretically there is plenty of great storytelling in this book and a good number of endings, which it drove its author crazy, and so it's pretty notorious for that reason, but also apparently it's a fantastic book, which is why it deserves to be made into a game. So that's kind of the basic story leading into the events of this episode. We follow the main character who is creating the game, and just it's really, really cool. Like, there's little Easter egg choices where if you choose one thing, it changes how things sound later on, or it changes the commercial that gets played on the TV when the main character is watching TV later on. So there's little things like that you can choose, but then there's also things that are like life-changing for this guy, and just, yeah, really, really awesome. So back to the endings thing. The way I figured it, there's about 3 different endings, and quasi spoiler alerts, I'm not going to go into great detail, but if you haven't watched it or played through it, however the terminology should go, then definitely do that before we finish. Anyway, so you have the ending that you get the game out and everything's great, you get a great score. There's the ending where the game comes out and you get a great score, but you end up in jail. And then there's it's probably only 2 now that I'm analyzing a little bit more deeply, because the other endings are all bad scores, and they all end with the main character wanting to restart. So it prompts you to restart from a certain decision. So I don't really count those endings as endings. You only really got 2. There's another shorter ending, but it also ends with it prompting you to restart. So that one doesn't count either. But it's really funny if you choose the right path. You can go tell your therapist that somebody is watching you on Netflix, and then it ends with this really cheeseball action sequence. And it's just ridiculous. But they thought that out. Now, my only nitpick for this episode of Black Mirror would be that the proper endings are dark and darker. I understand it's Black Mirror, and the point is that it's supposed to be dark. However, it's a pick-your-own-adventure, and it just seems like if they had done one that didn't involve you killing your father, or, horrible things along those lines, like, that would have kept the variety a little more fresh. I mean, there's still not just white and dark. You could go gray and dark. So, I don't know. And it's just super nitpicky, because either way, at the end of the day, this is a great episode, and I can't say that enough. So, let's get into the ratings before I ramble way too long. General score for this episode of Bandersnatch, we're looking at about an 85, which is pretty freaking good. Again, I feel like I am quite critical of my entertainment media, so 85, a solid B. Yes. As far as how it compares to other episodes of Black Mirror, it's going to be about an 80. So the anthology rating, about an 80. There's definitely more solid episodes. There's definitely more enjoyable episodes. There's more introspective episodes that aren't just dark for the sake of being dark. And yeah, I know they were trying to also input some quasi-philosophical bits in there, but it really just comes off as fever dreams and drug ramblings, and it doesn't come off as actual philosophy. So it seemed a little more shallow than they were going for, which is also kind of why it's getting Bs. Story rating, again, is an 80. I feel like it's great. I can't say that enough. Again, it's great, but it could have been better. There could have been a lot more development for more than just our main character. There could have been a lot more emotion there, because you feel pretty disconnected from him. That might be due to the storytelling style, because it's a pick-your-own-adventure, so it might just be inherently that you can't get much better than this, but I feel like there is room for improvement. So story-wise, we're going for an 80. And then enjoyability. Again, I feel like this is great, and enjoyability is one that is usually going to be higher than most, because I tend to enjoy things in spite of their flaws. So enjoyability for this episode, we're looking at 90 on enjoyability, which is a decently high score for Bandersnatch. Next on the list, we are talking about Season 1 of Titans over on the DC Universe app. Now, I'm of two minds for this show. One mind I like to call the Kevin Smith mind, because it's just cool to see this stuff happening in a mainstream outlet. I guess is kind of a really loose term in this usage, but a fairly mainstream outlet. I mean, there's a lot of money that got put into this. It's pretty high profile, so it's really cool to see this stuff play out on screen live action. And there's no real justification beyond that why that part of me likes it. That's why I call it the Kevin Smith part of me, because yeah, again, you've probably watched his channel, so you know what I mean by that. Now, the other part of me, the critical part of me, sees all the flaws, and that's what we're going to be talking about. First off, we have an incongruent editing style in certain sections, and it's even inside of singular episodes. There are moments that are beautiful as far as editing and direction and dialogue, all of that fan-freaking-tastic. And then there's sections that sometimes immediately follow those that are pretty terrible. So it's inconsistent in that respect, which is a little distracting. Some episodes more than others, which also kind of brings us to the next point, is that we do have some character arcs. We don't have a character arc for all of the Titans, I feel like. Beast Boy pretty much is one note the whole time. There are some little character arc things that factor into his character, but by and large, he's The same in episode, I think he comes in episode 3 as he is in episode 11, just now he has a team behind him. So more could have been done there. Brenton Thwaites as Robin, really not a whole lot of change. Well, okay, I take that back. There is a pretty drastic change from the first half of the season to the second half of the season, but it all happens in one episode. About episode 4 or 5, he goes from being a complete douchebag Dick Grayson to what we know of as Dick Grayson in the comic books. Now, honestly, I feel like that is due in large part to a lot of the reaction from fans. And also, back on the editing bit, it feels like some of these episodes just cut, which kind of says, hey, we were editing this to be binged like a Netflix show, and then somebody up on the upper echelons of what's going on at DC said, you know what, we should put out an episode a week so that we can get more money out of our subscriptions. Because now their model, which is a brilliant model, is they're going to have one episode of original content every week. Not always the same show, obviously, because Titans is done now, but now we're moving into Young Justice, and then after Young Justice, I think it's Swamp Thing, and so on, and so on, and so on. So they're just going to keep a year cycle of one new episode a week, which is brilliant, because then they're keeping people interested all year long. But that decision, I feel like, should have been made earlier so that the first, 4 or 5 episodes don't just feel like they stop. Because that's distracting. And then also, on the direction side, and this could be just cinematography, or it could be the showrunner. I don't know where exactly this decision was made, but the entire series is shot with this really dulling blue filter. It could be done in post, I don't know. Very likely was done in post, because in certain scenes it's like neon, but it's them doing this whole, we're gritty and we're trying to be super realistic and we're trying to be super dark, and so apparently that means muting the colors. This is a comic book show. It makes sense to have bright, vivid colors. We can still take you seriously even though you have bright colors. There's no reason why the two should be mutually exclusive. So again, those are kind of nitpicky things, but they're also things that kind of take you out of it. So let's get into the ratings. General rating for this is an 85 out of 10. I did really enjoy the season. The mythology, as far as how it compares to the comic books, we're going to give this about an 80 out of 100, because they took some liberties. The liberties they took make sense in the context of the show, but by and large, but certain ones you could have done without. Moving on. The overall story, as far as from episode 1 to episode 11, again, there's good movement. Some of the episodes probably could have been cut out entirely. Some of the episodes could have been trimmed up and maybe added on to other episodes. So you probably could have actually gotten away with 8 instead of 11 episodes. Kind of trimmed out the fat a little bit, and it would have been a better story. So we're giving the story an 80 out of 100 as well. And then enjoyability, like I said, I really did enjoy this show. 85 out of 100. Overall, pretty decent score. Season 2, I hope, will be much, much better. No reason to not expect it to be better. I feel like as series go on in TV, they get better. As series go on in movies, they start to level off. So, hoping that trend stays the same. But that, guys, is where this update for the week ends. What did I miss? What should we talk about next week? Let me know in the comments down low. If, though, you want to go deeper into the conversation, jump over to the website, generallynerdy.net. That is a place you can go find all of the social medias, all of the everything to interact a little more directly, generallynerdy.net. Also, click the general store tab across the top, and you go check out some of the new merch that I've been posting over the last 2 months. I have posted quite a bit of new merch. If this is your first time visiting Generally Nerdy, then please don't forget to subscribe or follow, depending on which platform you're listening on. Definitely click that like button if you like what I'm trying to do, or the dislike button, whatever. Just let me know you're listening out there. And before we go, guys, always remember that if it's generally nerdy, it's probably here.